Hello, sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This is a special live pod coming to you post-game with a reaction to the USA versus Türkiye friendly that finished a few hours ago. 1-2, a loss for the U.S. men's national team. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Saturday, let's see, June 7th in the year 2025? The year is flying by.
I'm doing well. A busy summer for the U.S. national team is off and running.
Yes, it is. Let's dive right into it. As I mentioned, the U.S. losing to Türkiye today over there in Connecticut, the first of two friendly games designed to prepare this team for the upcoming Gold Cup, which obviously you can see on Fox starting a week from today, actually. So from a result perspective, not great, to say the least. I think that makes 3 losses in a row for Mauricio Pochettino. It's $6 million a year for Mauricio Pochettino. To be fair to him, this is a different look type of team, and this is going to be a different look type of camp for the Gold Cup, and I think that showed up in a number of different ways in terms of his starting lineup. General reaction, not positive, but they are certainly positive things I think that we can point to. But I think that's also relative to the fact that we are kind of grasping at straws at this point, grasping for anything that resembles something that is interesting, something that is inspiring, something that reignites or even ignites a belief and pride in this team. I think that there were moments today, but I also think, and I've said this before, Mosse, on the pod, the U.S. soccer public, and I think the U.S. public, as we get ready for the 2026 World Cup a year from now, they don't care how the U.S. men's national team wins. They just care that it wins. Now, we're going to get deeper into what it looked like today. General thoughts first, Mosse, in terms of this result and performance.
I said on the pod recently that what could give this story a happy ending this summer is if a couple of players really emerged and staked their claim to a big role in 2026. And then we might look upon all the missing players as having been a blessing because it opened the door for some new players to emerge. I'm not sure we got that today. As we go through the performances, I think you'll find that most of them are going to say, not too good, not too bad, kind of okay. Now, I do want to focus on 2 players that play the same position. Watching Tyler Adams play this game in the second half, it felt like an intramural game where you bring in a professional as a ringer because he was just on a different level from everybody else on the field. And it just underlines how much better that top tier of U.S. player is, the Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie's, Christian Pulisic, Anthony Robinson, are than that second tier. And, you know, the player that Tyler came on for, Johnny Cardoso, was the other extreme. He was the worst player on the field, had an absolute shocker in the first 45 minutes, including an incredible blunder that led to the Türkiye goal, which shifted the momentum in this match. And, you know, we're going to a weird place with Johnny because if you believe reports, it sounds like he's about to go to Atletico Madrid for 30 million euros. I could see him thriving there next season under Diego Simeone. And then there's a certain type of person that's then going to turn on the TV and be incredulous that he's not starting for the U.S. But how many more opportunities do we have to give this guy before we conclude that it's just not going to translate? There's just something wrong when he puts on the U.S. jersey. He turns into a different player.
Let's remind people that it's been a few hours, or if you didn't watch the game, the starting lineup was Matt Freese in goal, and we know that Zach Steffen just can't catch a break in terms of his opportunity, so he has left cap. Matt Freese in goal. Alex Freeman on the right back position, Chris Richards and Miles Robinson to start the game in the center back positions. Max Darson on the left-hand side, Luca Della Torre and the aforementioned Johnny Cardoso in the midfield, Malik Tillman in front, you know, sharing it with Diego Luna, Jack McGlynn over there on that right-hand side, and Patrick Agyemang up top. It started out great for the U.S., 59 seconds in with a goal from Jack McGlynn. Wonderful goal. Not surprising to anybody that has watched him. Obviously, Türkiye does not know a whole lot about Jack McGlynn, cutting in on that off wing and doing what he does and has done now on a consistent basis. So that was nice. I think that in hearing some of the instant reactions to this game, Mosse, I think a lot has been put into this, this 5-minute period where obviously Türkiye came back and scored 2 goals. The first one, as you just mentioned, I've banged on about playing out of the back and, the facetious way that I talk about it being romantic. It is a disease, I think. And I want to be very, very clear. There were instances tonight where playing out of the back was on. And actually, I thought they did a good job, and they created some space, and they were able to get down the field. And I think that they looked like they knew what they were doing. But there's also a time and place for it, as we all know. And if you get caught, especially in your own box playing out of the back, bad things can happen. And that's exactly what happened. And then they followed it up, where it just seems like they all lost the plot. Mosse, when you see a game like this, with the circumstances relative to Pochettino, a new coach, not a whole lot of time, and a whole lot of new names, how much the onus is on the players and how much is it on Pochettino? So, for example, when they're playing out of the back, some of these players may play in teams and in places where that is either frowned on or that's just not how they do it, right? But they're in the national team, and they obviously have to adjust if they have to. How much is this on Pochettino when you see something like that? Because I was arguing with my brother when we were going back and forth on how much we should put on the players and how much we should put on Pochettino. They are told, albeit in a short period of time, this is how you're going to play. And whether they can or cannot do it, that's how they have to play in order to ingratiate themselves to Pochettino in this instance. Or is it just more of a general type of feeling and you got to be able to adjust as an individual player, and I'm taking too much of the responsibility off the players?
Well, first off, let me just say, in a friendly, I don't generally mind them working on playing out of the back. I think it's okay in a situation where the outcome of the game doesn't really hurt you in a tournament setting. But to your point, I've always interpreted being a play out of the back team as meaning that when you have the option of going short or going long, you choose to go short. But in some instances, there's no option. Everybody short is covered. And then I do think your basic common sense as a player has to take over. We've talked about this. Even Manchester City, we view Pep Guardiola as the ultimate playing out of the back coach, but he also gives Ederson license if Ederson thinks the right play is to go long to a player. Sure. So I don't want to take it completely out of the player to be able to make a judgment in a situation about what the right soccer play is. So I would actually lean in that instance a little bit more on Johnny and just think that he made just a disastrous decision there.
All right, going around the field, I don't think that Matt Freese could have done anything, and he made a couple of saves. But to be fair, especially in the second half, there was very little for Matt Freese to do. So I think he took his opportunity, and I don't think he's going to be blamed for either of the 2 goals. And like I said, he made some saves. I don't think that either outside back is there yet. Doesn't mean that in a few years they can't be, but there's nobody in terms of Arston or anybody else that has come in and given me a possible acceptable replacement for someone like Jedi. There's a huge, huge gap. Even on the other side, and I know Sergiño Dest is not there, I don't think Freeman is it yet. Miles Robinson only played a half, not because he was bad, but I think that was just kind of planned. I do think, and I've been hard on Chris Richards over the years, I do think that he was one of the shining lights of this game. Liked the way that he played. I liked the way that he did when they were playing out of the back. I liked the passes that he found, and I think, at least in my mind, he took a step forward and really acquitted himself. You mentioned Johnny, which, I don't know what it is. He's obviously a good soccer player, but unless it translates to the national team, Pochettino and us, when we're looking at the national team, will have no use. And it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of opportunity. So I don't know what it is. If they're playing a way that he can't adjust to, or if he just puts that shirt on. And by the way, I don't like the shirts that they wore. All right, speaking of the shirts. All right, as I told you before, when they came out, they're going to show up as black on the field, which they did, and the pinstripe is going to be completely lost, which it was. I digress. Malik Tillman, I actually thought had a very good game. We've talked about how good he has been over in Holland, and I think again he, like Richards, kind of took a step forward, which is good. Jack McGlynn had a great goal. So that's a good thing for any young player coming in, an inexperienced player from the national team perspective coming in. That's great. Diego Luna didn't dominate in the way that I think some people wanted him to, but he still showed time and time again his willingness to get down and dirty, and there is a value to that, especially in this type of setting. I still don't think we have a striker, and Ajiman, while there's a couple moments here or there, I just don't think that he puts the fear of God into anybody that we play, at least now. Any disagreements there, and then we'll get to some of the substitutions and the things that happen.
No, I thought Arston got into some good spots, but unfortunately just couldn't finish the plays. Luca Della Torre was a real bright spot for me in the midfield. I thought he moved the ball around well.
Yep.
Jack McGlynn, the romantic in me, would love to see a player like that playing in that deeper midfield role, almost like an Andrea Pirlo, but I recognize that his best chance of getting on the field for the U.S. might be further up the field, and Pochettino has carved out a nice little role for him as that inverted winger, and he showed with that sweet left foot he has what he can do. So that was nice to see. I agree with you. Tillman and Luna both had moments. Man, it was disappointing that Tillman didn't put that header away when Tyler Adams served him up on a platter. Yep. The U.S., I have to say, played well in the second half, and I thought created enough chances that they deserved to tie this game. It should have been 2-2. And then
well, hold on a second, because you're kind of hedging and kind of moral victorying this a little bit, and I understand what you're doing, and I know you're kind of maybe bringing much more perspective than my little brain can fathom right now. And this gets to something that we'll talk about in a little bit, but I just want to at least plant the seed here. The patience of American soccer fans out there has worn thin with this team, and so they have very, very little forgiveness, I think, or grace. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that they have earned it or deserved it here. So taking a bigger picture or a long-term type of view, and I'm not talking about just 2026, but just, small little victories. And, I'm going to push back on that in a little bit. But anyway, I just wanted to plop that in. Go ahead, Mosse.
No, it's a disappointing result, but just sort of my analysis of the match on balance of play, this felt like kind of an evenish game where if you look at the chances both ways, I think a draw would have been a fine result. I don't think the U.S. got played off the field.
Exactly. Absolutely. They weren't outmatched by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And considering some of the different personnel that was in there, I guess you could glass half full this going forward. As you mentioned, Tyler Adams did come in at halftime, and I think he fundamentally showed the level that he is, the leader that he is, and the change in terms of quality and effect when he got on the field. Any other subs in terms of later on in the half? Again, Miles Robinson went out. Mark McKenzie came in at halftime. They seem to be that's kind of planned substitutions. Again, nothing that either of those players. When it comes to Johnny, we already talked about Johnny, but certainly when it comes to Miles Robinson, I think it was more of a planned type of change. But I thought Mark McKenzie did fine in that second half. And in general, the U.S. team, like I said, very few shots allowed. They maintained possession throughout the game. They had more possession. So there's plenty of data points that I'm sure we can look at. But ultimately, the only data point that matters is the final score.
Yeah, Haji Wright was lively when he first came on. Quinn Sullivan was lively towards the end there. Brian White was a disappointment for me after he came on, didn't make much of an impact. I'm hoping he gets more time maybe against Switzerland because I have high hopes for him. I think between him and Ajiman, he's the one that has the better chance of emerging this summer. So this was not a good start in that regard.
Okay, so I don't know how much you or our viewers or listeners, watched the game over there from our friends over there on TNT and Max. They interviewed Tyler Adams after the game, and look, we have seen now, it's years. We've kind of seen Tyler Adams grow up, and I think from the moment that he stepped on the scene, we've marveled at his maturity and the way he can express himself. And the way that he talks about the team, and that's all fine and well, and it's wonderful and it's positive, and there's a reason why people look to him as the leader. Anyway, they were interviewing him. I did think that his post-game comments, I think they failed to at least recognize where we are right now, and I was left looking at him and thinking about Tyler Adams and what he was saying. And just a couple of quotes here. Tyler Adams, I was really excited. I think for the first time in the last few camps, we're going to take a lot more positives away than negatives. A good building block for those guys. He was talking about some of the guys that were in there. A lot of the first opposition that was from outside of CONCACAF, which is good experience. But then he was asked, where do you see this team now a year out from the World Cup? And he said, I think we have a lot of room for growth. If you asked me that back in March, I would say we are far away. After looking at the performance like that, pointing to the field, there are a lot more positives we can take away. The energy and the competition and the way we were able to compete in a game like that today shows that we have the potential to do something special. Again, the self-awareness of the fact that people are fed up with this team, that there is an angst relative to this team. And I don't think there are positives from this day and from this 90 minutes, but I don't see everybody suddenly turning a new leaf and completely changing their belief and their confidence relative to that performance for a number of different reasons, not the least of which, at the end of the day, you lost. And you lost to a team at home, although it was a hell of a Türkiye percentage over there. I was talking to Brian Dunseth. He estimated 75-25 Türkiye fans over there. But you lost at home from a U.S. perspective. And when you're talking about that, I think it falls on deaf ears. And more importantly, I think for a leader like Tyler Adams to kind of not, and I'm not saying he hasn't done it in the past, but in this moment, not acknowledge that they got a whole lot of more work to do to win back fans, whether they're soccer fans or just general fans out there. And this type of result, as much as you might find little pieces to celebrate, this does not help. And it doesn't help Pochettino either.
I agree that those comments, that's the first I'm hearing of them. They're way too positive for what the game was today. That's, like I said, I did think the U.S. played okay, but what Tyler said is really overstating it for me. The vibe should still be negative. We've lost 3 in a row. We got to get our act together. We got a big summer, a lot to prove. Instead, He put way too much of a positive spin on it.
I did think then, watching this team play, and we've talked about this before, Mosse, and this is interesting because this was more of a European, it was a European type of style in the opposition, but we've talked about it, and we've also associated that ruthlessness that a lot of the South American teams bring, and obviously with a lot of skill, but they marry that, which is, I think, what makes them great, and almost hunting in packs. And the pressure, and therefore the limited amount of time that you have, I think that level for some of these players on that field was too much. I also think that the U.S. is not able yet to be able to do that, and certainly wasn't able with this collection of players on the field. It'll be interesting what changes happen for that next game, which is happening on Tuesday in Nashville against Switzerland, which, by the way, beat Mexico tonight. The only of the 3 big boys, I guess you would call them, in CONCACAF. The only team to win is our friends from the Great White North, who took down Ukraine 4-2, I think. So congratulations to them. But the Gold Cup is coming, and obviously these 2 games we're kind of using as a litmus test, and we are going to, extrapolate it out when it comes to individual players and obviously the results here. But I know you had mentioned earlier this week when we were talking on the pod that you were actually, in a strange way, maybe even more excited to see them play these friendly games against these 2 quality European teams than maybe even some of the Gold Cup.
And by the way, Mexico now plays Türkiye. They have the same opponents as the U.S. in reverse order, so we'll be able to do a compare and contrast with them. Canada faces Ivory Coast in their second game in this window. But yeah, I mean, the way I phrased it on the pod was I'm actually more disappointed about the missing players missing out on this game, because it's rare that the U.S., to your point, gets to play European opposition of this level. And obviously that's true again with Switzerland coming up. And listen, I do want to say something about the missing players. I remember a couple of years ago, USA Basketball played some tournament in which all the top NBA players asked out. They sent a weakened team and they struggled. And Greg Popovich, who was the coach, was asked so many questions about the missing players that at one point in a press conference, he snapped and he said, look, there are no other players. It's just these guys. They're the ones that chose to compete to put themselves in the arena, and they're the only ones I'm going to talk about. And I will say, I'm sort of reaching that point this summer where we probably do need to move on from the storyline of who's not here and just focus on the guys that are here. So if I go there once or twice on this pod, and maybe even on Tuesday again after the Switzerland game, but I do want to generally start to move on and pivot away from that and just focus more on the guys that are here.
I get it, and that's fair. But again, I think we go back to the time, a year away from the World Cup, and it blows my very little brain that this is where we are, a year away from the 2026 World Cup. Speaking of the 2026 World Cup, a little, not a brouhaha, but, you know, some things have bubbled up over the last couple of days relative to Mauricio Pochettino and the open Tottenham Hotspur job. We know, obviously, he is kind of revered there. And anytime a big job like that and an association like Mauricio Pochettino has, becomes available, there is going to be talk. I think he did address it after the game today, although it's Pochettino, and sometimes when he talks, and especially when he's talking in English, there's kind of a circular way in which he talked. But he did not completely shut it down, but he did kind of shut it to the side, basically saying that this has happened before, and he's always associated with Spurs and what he has done. So it's kind of a normal type of reaction. I don't know what Pochettino's ultimate contract entails, but it would surprise me if there is a buyout for him to be able to go anywhere. And as a matter of fact, if I was doing the deal, again, a year and a half before, not just a World Cup, but a home World Cup, and an incredibly important and historic World Cup, there's no chance that I would want to hire somebody that is even thinking about the possibility of doing and going someplace else. But all indications are Mauricio Pochettino is committed. He's been paid a whole lot of money. And, just the results so far have not been good, but he's being paid a whole lot of money. And all indications are that he's 100% committed to this job, obviously through the World Cup. And we all knew this was going to be a short-term type of thing. But with his quality, I think U.S. Soccer believed that this is the guy in a short period of time to whip them into shape and give us the best possible chance of success next summer.
It would be really bad form for him to leave. He had to know that good club jobs would open up during this time when he was the U.S. coach, and that he would be a potential candidate for them. But for him to accept this job, it's because he had reached a place in his mind where this is something I want to do for the next 2 years. I want to coach in a World Cup. I want to coach the host nation at a World Cup. So I suspect he'll continue with that train of thought and stick it out here with the U.S.
Stick it. I don't want someone to stick it out. I want someone to be. This is the place that I want to be. But if he's even flirting with it, I think that he should step down. I don't think you should waste our time. And I think it's like I said, I think it's ridiculous. But again, if there is even a morsel of truth to this, it would be incredibly disappointing. But I digress again. Okay, Mosse, what anything that you want to see relative to this Switzerland game coming up in terms of some of the changes? I would assume that he's going to try some different things, and we're going to see some other players when it comes to this roster.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I'd like to see Brian White get a chance from the start. I'd like to see Sebastian Berhalter, assuming he's available. I suspect Tyler Adams will start for Johnny Cardoso. But other than that, Brendan Aronson is a player I wouldn't mind seeing. But Diego Luna, Malik Tillman, Jack McGlynn, most of my favorites on this roster were on the field at some point today. So, yeah, I think it'll be a lot of the same guys.
All right. A reminder that the U.S. is in Group D over there in the Gold Cup. On the 15th of June, they play against Trinidad and Tobago. On the 19th, against Saudi Arabia, a guest in the Gold Cup this year. And then on the 22nd, against Haiti. All winnable games. The U.S., you should expect, even with this different type of U.S. team in terms of personnel, I think we should still expect this team to come out of the group, to win this group, and to go on and to challenge for yet another Gold Cup. Should we leave this and just wrap up some things in terms of the international window and some other stuff that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we had a really fun week covering the UEFA Nations League semifinals, and it concludes tomorrow with a great final: Portugal, Spain in Munich, live on Fox. John and Stu on the call from Munich Football Arena. But how about those two semifinals we did Wednesday and Thursday? On Wednesday, Portugal came from behind to beat Germany 2-1, all the goals in the second half. Wirtz and then Conceição off the bench, and who else but Cristiano Ronaldo with the late winner. And then we had that incredible 9-goal thriller in Stuttgart the next day. Spain races out to a 5-1 lead over France. They're putting on a show. Nico Williams, Merino, Pedri, Lamine Yamal twice. And then they take the foot off the gas. Next thing you know, Ryan Cherki comes on, gives France a boost, a goal, and assist. Colomani gets one. And it's 5-4, and Spain are holding on at the end. But they do move on. They have a shot at yet another trophy here. And what's been a really fun conclusion to this UEFA Nations League for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the Spain-France match, you're seeing the 1 and 2 teams in the world. And I think both of the semifinals with all 4 of these teams, they could absolutely show up in this way in a semifinal or a final for that matter come the summer of 2026. So maybe this is, seeing ahead as what's going on. Obviously, the Portugal story with Ronaldo is always going to continue on and be a big part of the story. And now you got the old guy and the young guy coming up against each other for the first time. So that's going to be fun to see in the final with a Spain-Portugal team. No love loss and certainly plenty of connections going forward. They've all said some very nice things about each other leading up to this final. I mean, I think we expect that Portugal is still going to start Ronaldo, although some of the changes that Roberto Martinez made were vital and fundamentally changed the course of the game against Germany. So you then, as every manager has to go through, were those changes good because we made them mid-game, or were those changes good because those players need to be on the field? Any changes that you see relative to the final, Mosse, being made by either of these teams?
I suspect Vitinha will start. I understand coming off the Champions League final, maybe he wasn't 100% fit, and so he came on as a sub, but he was sensational when he did in that Germany-Portugal match. And, between him and Pedri, you have maybe my 2 favorite midfielders to watch right now. And Portugal is one of the few countries that has the midfield quality to sort of hang with Spain and not have to concede possession. So we'll see how they choose to play it. You have Roberto Martinez, a Spaniard, going up against Spain. As we've talked about, that's becoming this trend now in the international game with so many foreign managers. Pochettino might have to face Argentina at some point. But yeah, I'm excited about it. And look, we said going in that this UEFA Nations League Final Four could impact the Ballon d'Or race. If you thought that Dembele and Lamine Yamal were the 2 favorites, Lamine Yamal certainly won that duel on Thursday. And I think with a great performance in this final, maybe scores a goal again, he could really underline the fact that it's got to be him, right? I'm sorry, but I don't know why people are still fighting this.
Well, Mbappe believes it's Dembele. So if you in his pre-game interview, that's what he said. And what I would expect that. I think that it's Lamine Yamal. I think that we are doing him a disservice because of the age, and he is just the best player in the world at this moment, and he just happens to be a teenager. He's not a teenager who's the best player in the world. He's the best player in the world who just happens to be a teenager. If you are in the U.S., you can watch it on Fox. Myself and Rob Stone and David Mosse behind the scenes. We'll be bringing it to you tomorrow, so we'll be up and at 'em early to bring that to you on Sunday, so you can certainly check that out. I will be on the road next week doing some fun things out on the East Coast, but we will have shows for you as we get ready to celebrate the 1 year out from the 2026 World Cup. So we're excited about that. Anything before we go, Mosse?
Well, as long as Kyla put it in the rundown, I should mention the South American World Cup qualifiers.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil debut was a 0-0 draw away to Ecuador. A pretty drab game, but I will say Brazil's problem under the previous coach, Dorival Jr., had been that he was playing this ridiculously unbalanced 4-2-4 formation. Brazil was getting overrun in the midfield. So the mere fact that Ancelotti lined us up in a 4-3-3 The team made more sense tactically. They didn't play well, but nevertheless, I thought it was a step in the right direction to just look out on the field and see players in their correct positions. Argentina won 1-0 away to Chile. Julian Alvarez got the goal. Messi didn't start. He came on as a sub. We know Argentina's already qualified. Nobody qualified from CONMEBOL in this last match day, by the way. Colombia's struggles continued 0-0 at home to Peru. That's an awful result. And they now have to go away to Argentina. They lose that. And if Venezuela ever gets something away to Uruguay, it's going to start to get interesting for that last spot. Brazil play host to Paraguay. And last thing I do want to note, we did have some teams qualify in the last few days. Uzbekistan, who are off to their first World Cup, Jordan off to their first World Cup, and Korea Republic off to their 11th straight. They have a streak going back to 1986. So yeah, the field's starting to take shape. We're up to 10 teams. That number is going to increase here in the coming days. So yeah, the 26th World Cup percolating.
I love it. I love it. I love seeing this, the scenes and the tears. We saw that with Uzbekistan when they qualified, and as we know, this is an expanded World Cup, the biggest one in history, which gives the opportunities to maybe some teams that we haven't seen before. And don't sleep on these teams, because while it might be their first one and there might be just a sense of being happy to be there, I think we're going to see some surprises when it comes to some of these teams. So I don't think it's going to be as diluted as people have made it out to be with a 48-team World Cup. All right, anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, keep downloading and reviewing and rating and subscribing and doing all the different things that you do out there, whether it's on X or on Spotify or Instagram or Apple or all the different things. Pound those buttons, right, left, up and down, double fisting, smash it, smash it, smash it. Do all the different things. As I said, I will be on the road next week, but we will be bringing you stuff. I travel with my microphone, so it's not a problem. And we will do another live show on Tuesday after the U.S.-Switzerland game. Hopefully there's a win to celebrate and to talk about then as we head barreling down the tracks towards this Gold Cup, and then obviously a year out from 2026. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Enjoy your soccer on and off the field or whatever you're doing out there. We'll talk to you again next week. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.